Good evening and welcome to Fish Talk Live and the Great Lakes Fishing Podcast. We got a great guest this week. It is Captain Phil Retherford from Catch a Bunch Charters over in Grand Haven, Michigan. I'm actually on vacation this week at the lake house. Got the lake behind me. Don't have my typical set behind me, but this is what we got going on. You might see a feral child or two running around in the backyard behind me, but do not adjust your sets. It is a real lake behind me. Captain Phil, how's it going tonight?
Good. How are you doing, Chris?
Just living the dream, man. We got somebody wanting to put a light on. It's like you're a little bit dark, but we'll roll with it tonight. Just want to get a second here to give you an opportunity to tell us a little bit about yourself and about Catch a Bunch Charters.
Well, I started off when I was about 11, 12 years old with my dad, Ed, up in Alpena, Michigan, and first mated for a couple other boats up there and started my business about 16, 17 years ago. Bought his 23-foot Grady White. Ran it as a business. My brother was the captain of that. Brought that down to North Muskegon and ran out of there up until 13 years ago, and then upgraded to a 31 Tierra and ran that for 1 year out of North Muskegon, and then moved to Grand Haven where I'm at today. So been fishing on the lakes on the charter boats for 36 years.
So you're a veteran of Lake Michigan. Why the move from Muskegon up to Grand Haven?
Muskegon it was good fishing out of there. You just don't have any of the walk-ons. You didn't have the tourism that Grand Haven did. The marina that I was out of up there was a nice marina. There's quite a few nice ones up there, but to get any walk-on clientele was very minimal. So I had the opportunity to move to Grand Haven to Chinook Pier. There's 16 charter boats on the row that I'm on. They have one open slip this year, so there's only 15. But so there's a lot of good captains ran out of there, and so I took the opportunity to move down and try to better the business.
Yeah, it's a beautiful area. It's an area that is well known for tourism. You're just downriver from Grand Rapids, so you've got a big kind of a population center there. Tell us a little bit about what that scene is like down there at the marina. You said you get some walk-on traffic, some people just kind of walk around deciding to go fishing. But what is that city, what is that town like on a typical summer weekend?
They have a lot of different festivities through the year. I guess a couple that I can think of would be like they have a kite festival early on in the year. They have soccer in the sand tournament. They have Coast Guard Festival, the 4th of July, which they didn't do fireworks this year, but it was still pretty busy out there. They have an art festival. And so where we're at, we're just down from the city marina. It's still part of the city marina, but with the boardwalk and that, there's a lot of foot traffic. It's been a little slower this year and last year because they had the buildings that attracted the people and that down towards where our fish cleaning station was. They had some black mold in them and decided to take them all down. So they got a new plan to update that and redo on the waterfront and change the farmers market and increase some foot traffic down by us. And we get a fair amount of walk-ons. We have an association that the people can book through. It just helps conflict of interest on the dock and that, and people walking and talking to every captain and that. So we have an association they can book through on the dock, and everybody's their own individual business in that. And some good captains down there, as there is on all of Lake Michigan.
Yeah, very nice. Tell us a little bit how the lake sets up coming out of port there. What's it like? What kind of structure may you run into? How deep do you got to, or how far do you got to go before you get into the deep water?
Well, this year was a little different. May fishery's been pretty good the last few years. This year it was all right, but excuse me, not as good as what it has been the last few years. But Grand Haven, we don't have much drops or anything. It's pretty much just straight out sand, a little bit of clay. We got some nets to the north. And it's probably about, I guess it's probably 7, 8 miles to get out to that 230 in that. And then when you get out, I was talking to a captain when we were fishing out there a few weeks ago. We fished a lot of that 200 to 280 and was fishing the one day. We run by numbers a lot on the GPS. So Grand Haven's like 3.5, like to go to the south, you hit the number change, which is at the zeros and that. Talking to a captain, and I was in 270 foot of water, 260, 270. Talking to him, he was on like the 1.7 line. I was on 1.6. I'm like, I don't see you. Talk to him again. He hit a couple more fish and that. And I'm like, what's your west number? And he told me he was in 290. I was in 270. He was 4 miles west of me. So to go from that 270 to 290, he was out 4 miles farther than I was. So it doesn't drop off a whole lot. Where we fished the tournament in Grand Haven up towards Muskegon, there's a little bit of a shelf up there. You can get from that 200 to 300 on that bit of a drop and that. And it was good fishing during the tournament. It's a bit far of a run for us to run every day. But when we were running straight out, it was no different. It's a big difference from fishing up in Alpena when had the Grady with twin outboards and you run out of the port of Alpena and out 9 miles to get outside the bay and then cut and run to the wreck. So you're running like 17 miles. And then you get over here and to run 17 miles like every day. It's a haul. Like nobody really does it. Where over there it was just an everyday thing. That's just, if you're going to go out and fish the wreck, that's where you ran. Or if you ran out to the mouth of the bay, it was 9 miles. Where that'd be for us, it's about like, it'd be like to run to Muskegon every day just to get outside the bay almost.
Yeah, I want to get into some of that you fishing with your dad a little bit later in the show. But let's talk a little bit again, some more about what you're fishing out of. What are some of the seasonalities like out of Grand Haven? How does that fishery change throughout the year? What are you fishing at the beginning of the season compared to like what you're going after right now and how you're going after them?
In the spring, I mean, it was different this year because we fished a lot of that deeper water and that, and it was like the silverfish, the kings and the coho and the steelhead were out there, and we were catching some lake trout, but the lake trout we were catching were decent sized fish. We weren't getting any of those ones that you had to measure. Now we're catching a few trout, but the salmon are starting to show up in that. And we had really cold water for the most part of the year in that. We're starting to get it where it's setting up a little bit and fishing that 70 to 120. There's still some guys fishing out deeper in that. Usually June used to be like, it was pretty much all lake trout, a few silverfish mixed in that. It's varied over the last couple of years in that. Used to be, you could tell everybody end of July all through August, early September, but with the plants and stuff like that and the natural reproduction that is our fishery now with some plants and that, the run that we used to get in the combat fishing in September and that, you might get it for a couple days and that, but it's different. It's where the 1 year, and this was when they're still planting, when they push, I mean, they push, we'll get cohos up there and that, and then we'll get the kings. But the one I can remember it because everybody that fished the Grand Haven Salmon Festival pretty much got their limit, and everybody just killed them in the channel. And in the afternoon, the one guy that fishes the channel quite a bit, Mike Harvey, he fished the afternoon, caught a few fish. Everybody heard about it from the morning fishery. It was packed on the next day on Sunday, and they caught like literally like 3 or 4 fish in the channel. And it's but I mean, throughout we're still fishing the trout through July and August and into September and that. But Don't fish them with very many rods usually, and try to get on the kings and the cohos and the steelhead and that, and it's pretty much a lot of people are pushing to the May fishery now. It's been really good, except for, like I said, it was just lack of this year a little bit, but you don't get the tourists, you get the real fishermen then, because of the temperatures and stuff like that. They don't mind going out and getting cold.
What would you say is the best time of year, Phil, to get out on Lake Michigan from Grand Haven?
That's a tough question because, like I said, if it was before this year, I would say middle to end of May. It's changed from like July and August. Everybody's like the big fish, which they've been getting some big ones. They caught a 31-pounder off of Grand Haven today. One of the boats did. They had some nice kings out of there today. But the May fishery and they still get big fish then, and quantities sometimes. But usually, like, I guess still end of July and into August and that. And it's just, you don't catch as many, but they're catching some big fish.
How are things right now? It's mid-July, getting there anyway. I guess it's the 8th of July. We're approaching mid-July. How are things in your neck of the woods right now?
Right now, a lot of the fish have been flash or fly, meat rigs, and then some of the spoons, some moonshines have been good in the morning and stuff like that. And then people are still running, depending on if they're getting bit on their chute, they'll switch it out and run a flasher and a spinning glow on the chute for trout, trying to get some numbers in that. But it's been anywhere from 5 to 10 fish as far as what the guys are catching and stuff like that. But they've caught some big ones. It's boat to boat. You can be fishing right by somebody and they catch 2 or 3 nice kings, and the other boat might not get them. And when you go to the station, it's when you have 7 fish and your biggest fish is 8 pounds and the other boat has 5 fish and they got 2 fish over 20 pounds, the bags are a little different. And it's one thing with fishing at the where I'm out of Chinook. It's, some people say it's a tournament every day because you have 15 boats. They're all coming into the cleanest station at the same time.
So everybody gets to have a look and kind of see what's going on. How are you kind of covering that water column right now, Phil? How are you getting your lines out, and what does that setup look like as you're heading out onto the water?
We're running depending on how rough it is in that, but it's been pretty decent. So we're running 3 boards aside. The better ones lately here in the last few days have been 300, 350, 375, 400, 450 coppers. The flasher flies on them, meat on divers. Yesterday a bit up in a little bit warmer water for some of the guys in that. We have the Port Sheldon buoy, and then we have a Muskegon buoy. Port Sheldon's to the south of us. It gives the surface temp, and then it also gives us our waves, min and max, and then it has a water break all the way down to 70 feet on the bottom. So you can see on the northwest wind or southwest wind or east wind, we can see where the water temp is. Granted, it's not exact of what it's going to be in Grand Haven, but it's gives us an idea of where we can start and where the temp's at. And today it was like 52. Actually, it was about 52 down 52 degrees or 52 feet. So we haven't fished anything really high. We were catching a few steelhead, some of the guys on the high stuff and that, but it's been pretty much that deep stuff. Some of the guys started running some plugs this week, and we're getting bit on them just because you have the bigger kings are around. You have that warmer water up top and running them up there. But the bait on the divers has been pretty good. The meat on the divers, highs and lows.
What are you running for meat right now?
As far as
your meat of choice.
Well, it's tough to get. Meat of choice would be cut your own. Some of the guys on our dock have alewives that they caught and fillet them and cut them. Run the stinger, the Dreamweaver. We don't have big one cut bait. I've been running some of that. It seems to be pretty good. I haven't ran it other than this year and that. I know there's the familiar bite out there and that, but you don't see much of it over here. It's just what's accessible, and it's mostly the Stinger, Dreamweaver, and the big one cut bait. Haven't ran any of their new stuff. I know they have colors and the glows and stuff like that, but I've just been running the straight natural color they have.
Very cool. I got a question coming in from YouTube. This is from Kevin. He'd like to know, what's your favorite trout setup to run deep in the chute?
Well, tough thing is you can't. They're making different ones now, but it's called Yellow Jeans. This is the fella right there. This is an old Pro Troll. Run it with either the Yellow Lightning spinning glow or the silver with the yellow tip. Sometimes we'll run a fly teaser on the. I don't have one on this one, but sometimes we'll run a fly teaser on the back of the spinning glow down over the hook. We run it. Basically, we'll hit bottom, let the speed catch up a little bit, hit again. Most of the time, we won't be ticking bottom when we're just run it down there. I run my leads a little bit longer than some of the other guys do. We run a braid rod for the chute. That way, when you're putting it down, we put it down under drag. So you're not holding your thumb on the spool. It's going down. So when we're fishing in that deeper water and you're 150, even 200 feet down, that rod's bent and that braid's straight down to the ball. You're still going to get blowback in that, but in any time we adjust down to the bottom, it's just backing off the drag and not free spooling and letting it down with your thumb and that. We just find that with the drag releasing a little bit, doesn't let out as much line. And when those small trout bite and that, you can see them on that a lot better. We run our leads about 32 feet and we tie a loop in our braid. And that way, when you're resetting the rod, we just hook our blacks release right back into the loop. And it's the same every time.
Very cool. Another question here coming up wants to know, what pound ball do you use?
On the chute, I run, I think it's a 17, 16, right in there. I don't run real heavy ones. I know a lot of guys are into the 20 and 25s and that. I run 15 on my out downs, and on my chute, I think is a 16, 17 pound ball. We just run around on the chute with a small fin, and then the fin weights on the out downs with them bent out so they send out to the side. But the heavy balls, I don't know. A lot of the riggers can pull them in that. It's like your car can go 100 miles an hour, but it's probably not the best to drive it at 100 miles an hour all the time. So
loud and clear there. How about you said you run really long line or long leads? What's behind the long lead? Why do you do that?
That's just what we've had luck with. I don't know that it's necessarily like super long, but I mean, some of the guys I talked to the other day when we were running stuff like that, like they're running theirs like 10 feet off the ball and that. And we'll run a setup that is if we're getting bit with trout on the chute and we're going to deploy other rigs, we'll put a wire down, and then once in a while we'll send our out downs. I mean, at the most we'd run like 4 trout rigs. Our out down, we usually run, say, like, just for instance, 150 feet of water, your chute's down like 170, 180 feet, just depending on what you have for troll and stuff like that, because your troll's trying to keep the speed up a little bit, so your other baits are working in that. And we might run an out, down, down, and run it down like 150 feet. So it's not necessary. Granted, you're only in 150 feet of water, but you're not going to be on bottom because of the blowback in that. So you're just fishing the suspended in that. And that's what we had up towards Muskegon in the tournament. And that we had our one on bottom was working good, but we also took a fair amount of suspended fish that were just off the bottom. They weren't necessarily where we're dredging in that.
Phil, I'm online quite a bit, and I see a lot of people talking about losing fish right now. And you're a guy that fishes as a charter captain. You also fish tournaments. What are some things that people can do to try to keep those fish on the line and try to minimize the amount of fish that they lose while they're trying to bring them in after they get a bite?
I know the big thing on the trout is a lot of people have them sit down, so you get that scope going out from the rod tip out to the fish is at less of an angle, more of a straight. Depending on the size of the trout, we'll have them drop the rod almost, if you can get the customers to do it, almost reverse the rod. So instead of holding the rod up and having it bent from up above their head and out, basically stand in the middle of the boat with the rod tip down towards the water. So the bend's going down towards the bottom of the boat and then out as far as standing on the back of it and that. And the biggest thing with the trout is once their head comes up, they can be very cooperative, but once their head comes up and they feel that air, they can start rolling a lot. But as far as like the salmon and stuff like that right now, I mean, a lot of people in the last few days, which is good for the tackle industry, because a lot of people are buying stuff, looking for baits because they broke off a lot of gear. But the one thing we do on our wire divers or meat bites in general, as far as if that fish hits, we'll back it off, let them take it for a while before we cinch up and get down on them. Or if a fish hits it and misses it in that, instead of popping it to look at it, just loosen the drag up and let it creep out. You'll get fish to hit like that too when they hit it and short strike it, and then you feed it back to him, and all of a sudden he's on.
All right, we got another one coming in from Facebook. This question, though, we might have to alter it a little bit. Have you done a lot of fishing on Lake Ontario, Phil?
0.
Okay, that's what I thought. So Justin, just mistakenly, what we were talking about, he says, how much different is fishing Lake Michigan than Lake Ontario? But let's just turn that on its head and say, how much different is fishing on Lake Michigan compared to Huron, where you kind of grew up and cut your teeth as a youngster?
The fishery's completely different now than when I was a kid, but over there you're fishing a lot of structure in that. The Nordmere, what it was just a rack out there that if he would have went probably about 200 yards either way, he would have missed the shoal, but he parked it on it in November and got bad gales the next day, and they had to come out and get the people off it and that. And so like off Thunder Bay Island over there, the drops, a lot of rock. You can't really, you couldn't just drop your downriggers balls down and like drag bottom in a lot of the areas over there because you'd lose your downrigger balls. But the fishery, when I wasn't fishing Lake Michigan, I was fishing Huron. There was, the pictures you see and the guys everybody from Detroit going up to Ludington area and all that. We'd go out to the Nordmere and catch the fish out there. The fisheries changed as far as the selection. A lot of the lures they use over there and what we used to use. Fluted dodgers with glow squids Richie's glow squids. I mean, that was 5 rods, divers, and all your riggers. You run fluted dodgers and the squids, and you can probably still catch them on them today, but not like it was then. And I don't know. I think a lot of it just has to do with the water clarity and stuff like that. My dad runs a lot of the big flashers, the 11-inch like coyotes, the big weenies that the different colors of their paddles, and runs those with spinning glows. And we run a lot of the 8-inch stuff over here, where a lot of the stuff that he has over there, like I'll try it over here and you'll get bit on it once in a while, but not like the stuff we use. And it's same goes over there. And even like my brother up in Petoskey, he runs a lot of the 11-inch blades with spinning glows and in that up there, and they seem to bite them, but just not down here for some reason.
Interesting. Speaking of the family, we got one coming in here from Ed Retherford. He says, Amy, Jeff, and I are watching. So the family is tuning in, and I think they're trying to maybe get a few secrets out of you here tonight.
Yeah. Amy and Jeff need a lot of them.
Let's talk about that a little bit. You grew up in a charter fishing family. Your dad, Ed's, been on the water for decades. You've got a brother, and I think your sister is also running a charter. What's it like growing up in a family like that, where everybody's on the water and doing this stuff?
Originally, it was my brother and me were first mate for my dad. My brother first made for a different charter boat up there too in Alpena. My sister wasn't big into the fishing and stuff like that until basically she met her husband, and they fish on the Detroit River, do a lot of walleye jigging, come over and fish over here, fish over in Erio, I think, for the steelhead and stuff like that. They run a Ranger over there, just fun fishing in that. My dad's still running. He's running a 30 Grady up in Alpena. I think he's in Presqu'île right now. My brother's in Petoskey. He fishes up there on my old boat, which was my dad's old boat. It's not a charter boat. It's just, he just uses it for him and his kids. And then, I guess, family fun and going out fishing up there. And then it was a lot of learning, a lot of different. I can remember one of the first times when we ran out and went out to the wreck, and which was the Nordmere and that was like some big thing because we were running so far on that. But growing up, fished a lot of center council boats up there. In the fall, we'd go and cast for browns, and that was one of my dad's big things. A lot of articles, the fishery in the bay there. When the browns would come back, we'd go and catch crocodiles, chartreuse and silver crocodiles. That's the only one you needed, or you weren't going to catch very many fish. And throwing spawn, drifting, watching for the fish to roll, anchoring, throwing spawn to them on a egg sinker and that. And it was an awesome fishery in that. And then they quit planting them in that, and they had it's gone down. But I mean, some unbelievable sights over there as far as when the fish used to come in to spawn, and what you can remember. I remember picnic tables of a lot of brown trout, and the captains up there, they would come up to Warnicke's Marina down from St. Clair. They'd come up and they'd fish walleye down there, and then there's 6 or 7 of them that come up and fish out of Warnicke's for salmon. So I got to fish with some of the different guys in that would come up from down there. Captain Steve Jones used to come up and fish up there. And so you got to fish with a bunch of different captains. So you saw a bunch of different stuff, but it was a lot of fishing. Fished the Sable with my dad growing up quite a bit. steelhead fishing and that. But it's a lot different from the old boat going 42 miles an hour and no radar, no autopilot, to going 22 miles an hour and being able to see what you have in front of you and able to go to the back of the boat and help set lines and run lines and do stuff and not worry about steering. Where I can remember many times as a kid that I wasn't looking out in front of me. I was looking down because I was sleeping on the steering wheel, getting yelled at by my dad.
Getting yelled at by your dad. And I'm not going to speak out of school here because I talked about this with him when we had him on the show. I think he was somewhere around episode 15. I know it was one of the first 20 for sure when we had him on. But your dad's really well known for using up a lot of mates. So he's still out there on the water and still chartering. What kind of advice would you give to someone who's going to be a first mate for your dad today?
I haven't fished or first mate for him for a while. Like I said, it was always, I can remember many times when my head was on the wheel and I wasn't driving in a straight line where the autopilot came in big. But I think he might have finally got an autopilot in that. And yeah, he fishes with quite a few different. It's a different port up there in that, and fish with quite a few different guys in that. And there's a fair amount more people in the game up there now than when we were up there. And but yeah, he always posts his numbers online of what number mate he's on in that.
At least he's keeping track.
Exactly.
Tell me a little bit more about that. You're touching on some stuff there I thought was pretty interesting. Tell us a little bit about how the equipment has changed since you started when you were, weren't even a teenager yet to now. What are some of the other equipment things that you guys are using now that you could only dream of back in those times?
Like I know some of the big ones that people see are the lead core, which you actually don't even see that as much anymore. There's still quite a bit of it, but into the copper. We're running meat a long time ago up there. And so to see that become more and more popular, and a lot of stuff we were doing was making our own. We were running like the squids from Lure Jensen, as far as the running those on as the teasers, and that ran many different kinds of downriggers. Started, my buddy ran up there. We used to have Prues, the manuals, and those were one of the faster ones, I guess you could say, because the wheel was so big on it. So you could just open up the crank in the middle and just let them free spool, but then reeling them up, you're getting, I think they're 1.5 feet, 2 foot of crank or something like that. So they're significantly different as far as some of the smaller spool ones that you'd see. But we've ran fishing with my dad, all different kinds. I can remember going to the fishing shows when I was younger, Bassorama, Silver Dome. I was at the Silver Dome when at the fishing show when it collapsed. So one time you walk out on the second floor and it was hanging down like eye level during the fishing show. Always went there he's been with Lawrence for years and years. I would go with him and just hang out at the shows. That's how I met a lot of these people that friends with and know in the industry. Berkeley, and which is now Pure Fishing, their whole thing, they used to have a knot tire where you could tie a knot and test your strength of your knot, and that I would spend enough time in the booth that I'd just start helping and running it as a kid, and pestering some of the guys. Guider from Shimano, been a friend of the family for years. So with the fishing shows and stuff like that, got to meet a lot of people, and you see we ran, the downriggers have evolved. Like immensely. I'm now with Canon. I run Hummingbird stuff. My dad runs all Lowrance and that. The rod technology, I mean, I have some diver rods still in my basement. My buddies, a couple of the guys on the pier into these, they salt fish, so they're into these mini rods. We used to fish a little 3.5 foot ugly stick on the piers up there, and we caught all different kinds of fish on it. But I have some wire rods in the basement. I told him I'd bring him one out. He could run it, and I don't even know if it'd hold up a mag dipsy pulling on it. But the reels, the speeds of the reels, the smoothness of them, a lot of the stuff has came a long ways when you see somebody with a, not that there's anything bad with them, but like a 209, or I mean even some of the ones with, and they're both great reels. Even like if you fish like a 600 and then switch to a 700 on wire, the difference between them reeling it in, I mean, it's night and day when you can get the better of the stuff that's out there to use. It really helps your game.
I want to unpack a lot from that, Captain Phil. First of all, tell me a little bit about your favorite knots. I think it's cool that you were into knot tying as a young man. So tell me about some of your favorite knots, some of the knots that you utilize all the time when you're out on the boat.
Well, we basically, I mean, our copper knot is just I'm not real familiar with a lot of the names of them and that, but I mean, we basically just run. I like just the plain old, whatever the people call it, Berkeley knot, the fisherman's knot, just the through twice, wrap it, come back through the loop. I like that knot on my flies, my spinning glows. It just seems to be, if you tie the polymer where you're running, which is what we tie like our swivels and stuff like that, where you're just running the loop through overhand, pulling it back through. If you run that on the flies and the spinning glows, it seems like that knot kicks off just a little bit because of how the line finishes when you tie it. So the traditional fisherman's knot, Berkeley knot, the beads sit nice on it, the hook sits nice and straight. And so those are basically our two that we run. Tying like braid to mono, or like for our shoot rod, we'd use a double uni, tying the braid to the mono. One of the things that some people ask that we've done as far as the like your wire, when you're tying to the backer, we'll just tie like a small knot in the wire at the very end and tie a single uni to the mono or whatever you're using for backer. And then when it cinches down and pulls, it's hitting that knot, so it's not going to come off that wire. I know there's a lot of different ways to do stuff. For our divers on wire, the swivels on that, the guys laugh at me on the dock, but I haven't lost many. I got this from somebody else along the lines, but basically just an overhand knot and tie it down. So you're just putting a loop in the wire, putting it through the swivel, tying an overhand knot, tightening it down, tie another overhand knot and tighten it down. And haven't had one fall off or fail, or we usually run a little piece of snubber or a bead up above it. So when you're reeling in, you can reel it to the tip and you're not reeling that wire right into the tip. For sliders, we run the surgical tubing. A lot of the guys run it. I know in some of the different ports, they run the Alberta Clippers or free sliders. I mean, up in Alpena, we'd run all free sliders. I never ran any of the rubber tubing till I got down over here, and running the surgical tubing with a little cut in the middle. And then it's basically a fixed slider where you just get it wet, send out your main bait, hook it up, run it down. That surgical tubing has a little slit in the middle of it. You run a swivel in there, and then so basically that just slides up and down your line, and then whatever length you want for your your leader to your slider. And so on that, we just tie like the tri-lead knot to the slider part of it, and then the polymer to the swivel, and run your bait on it.
All right, how about reels, Captain Phil? If you're going to get some reels today to put on your boat, what would you buy? What are some of your favorite reels?
Well, like I said, I've used Shimano for years. I mean, in the olden days, I used some of the Penn 320, 330s, 340s, that type of thing, but the retrieval is just so slow in that. But and they might be different now. But like I said, Eric Guider from the Shimano rep at the shows, Ron Chess I've known from the shows and that, but Eric's been a good family friend over the years and that, and so we run all Shimano. The 600 LCs, I run everything on my riggers. All have the line counters on them, just so you can see where the lengths of your leads. The 700s, 800s the 700s are great for your diver reels. They have a good retrieval rate. The biggest is getting them filled up. I see some guys that they have like a 300 copper or a 200 copper, and there's like a 1/4 inch of spool when it's full that you can still see. And when you let line out and you have a fair amount out when you're cranking, it's the difference. Like I told the one guy, I said, it's the difference of trying to wind fishing line around a pop can or trying to wind it around a 5-gallon bucket. And your retrieval rate's going to be a lot better when you can wind it around that 5-gallon bucket. So, the better you can get your reels full, the higher you're going to get your retrieval rate on the stuff. The other charter lakes that Shimano makes, or the charter specials with the drag on them and that, they're nice. We used to run those, but now we're running all the newer 600s. Some guys don't like them. We've had really good luck with them. They have a great retrieval rate. You just gotta, when you're fighting trout on the shoot and that, you just gotta make sure the customers don't get too excited, because they get to just cranking and then just rip the spinning glows right out of their mouths, because they have such a fast retrieve rate.
All right, Phil, it's hard to believe, but we're 45 minutes in. Is there something that you wanted to talk about tonight that we didn't get to? Is there a topic you had kind of on your mind that you wanted to touch on?
I'm just thankful I can do this as a fun side job. I don't compete with any of the other guys out there. Never have. When I came into Snook with all the other boats, never really undercut anybody. Just ran it as came in with what everybody else was running, because I do quality control for a concrete ready mix company. I've been there for 24 years now, and the whole fishing thing, it's not like my dad, where he was a teacher, so he was off during the summers. Everybody asks, how can you do this with concrete work? Isn't real busy in the winter, nor is charter fishing. They're both sort of busy at the same time, but it's been a great company. And just like what I do, I tell people, if the fishing's bad, I can go for a boat ride any day on my boat. So, I'm upfront with my customers and that, and I do it because I like to do it. It's a business, but it's not my livelihood where some others are in that, and don't want to take that away from them in that. But it's been fun. If I wasn't affiliated with the companies that I am and stuff like that, and doing it as a business, as a charter, I probably wouldn't be able to run the equipment and the boat and the products that I have in that. And it's nice, the stuff with Fish Hawk coming on with Cannon last year, and the new riggers, they're really nice for trout fishing. It's some small things that you don't think they're a huge deal in that, but we run the Hummingbird graphs and that. And last year when we were fishing trout quite a bit. When the mate's doing something with the boards, or you have a fish on a diver, you have a fish on the copper, and so I mean, you get a nice king or something, and it's pulling, and he's over there talking to them, or setting the drag, and you slow the boat down instead of hey, shoots on bottom, because you're running it just off bottom, so any speed change you're going to be hitting bottom. So instead of hey, shoots on bottom, and him having to go over and adjust it up, or you speed back up and slow down, and hey, shoots on bottom, you just hit it on the graph and you can adjust everything off there. And that was huge for us, as far as to be able to do that. And it doesn't seem like a big thing, but it's very nice to have it. The setup I have, just like my mate this year's a new guy for me. He's been fishing on the pier for years, but took him a little while to get used to it, because he'd set the shoot's always going to be the deepest. I call him my number one rigger. So my starboard rigger is my number one rigger. I have my Fishhawk probe on there, and he sets the number 3 rigger on his side, and he's always like, hey, how far is your rigger? And I'm like, just look at your rigger, because the probe's on mine. So when he sets his, he can see where the probe depth is right on his rigger. So he knows the shoot's on the deepest down, and then he can see right where my rigger's at just from being on top of it. And it's been a good system. It's nice.
Yeah, great way to be more efficient. And I told you we were done, but we've actually got one more question. I think it's a really good one. It's from Al on Facebook, and he'd like to know, what's one of your most favorite memories from fishing with your dad? Tell us a story.
Oh, I would say probably, like I said, I remember running out to the Nordmere, the brown fishery over at Partridge Point. I can remember going out there. So when I was growing up, like, he wasn't necessarily cycling through first mates like every few weeks. He the neighbor Gail used to fish with him in that, and we would go, like I said, it was chartreuse, crocodile, cast on the shorelines. But I can remember one day going over there just outside Warnicke's Marina. There was 1 or 2 boats. It was a very, I don't know if you'd say different fishery. It was just not a lot of people knew about it. And I can remember pulling up to the shoreline the one time with them, and there were so many fish in the one cut that you pretty much couldn't. You could fish them, but I mean, when you cast up in there, if they spooked at all, you'd get a fish on because you'd snag one. But I'd say one of the other big ones was when the salmon would run the channel up in Alpena. They'd come in. It was just a short john up to the dam, and we'd fish that. And it was always a lot of times it was my dad, his first mate Gail, one of the other guys that had a charter boat up there, Dale, me, my brother, and we'd have his center console, and we'd fish the channel. And it was always, they would go to Kentucky Fried Chicken and get the bucket of chicken to go troll in the channel and feed the seagulls chicken bones while we were trolling in the channel. And that.
That's a good one. That'll be one that'll stick with you. If people want to get out on the water with you, Captain Phil, what's the best way for them to reach you, get a hold of you to go do that?
They can reach me at catchabunchcharterswithan.com. So www.catchabunchcharters.com, or 616-498-2628. Those are the easiest. Facebook, it's Catch a Bunch on Facebook. All the social media platforms is pretty much the same as all Catch a Bunch. I just use that as across the board. Post most of my stuff on Facebook and that, as far as my platform that I use. And yeah, if you search Catch a Bunch, it'll come up online. Awesome.
Thanks so much for coming on tonight. Really appreciate you coming on and sharing some of your knowledge and telling some stories about kind of what it's been like for you growing up fishing on the Great Lakes. We've got a little bit of business to tend to. Kevin Skalicki, you are the question of the night. So go ahead and hop over on Facebook if you can and give us a private message there with your address, and we'll get you set up there. Next week, we're going to do something a little bit different. Instead of having a charter captain on, we're going to have a professional photographer on the show. We're going to be talking about taking better fishing pictures. So you're out there and you want to get that beautiful masterpiece to hang on the wall or put on the Instagram page. We're going to have a professional outdoor photographer on next week. That'll be cool. And the week after that, we're going to join you on the road. We'll tell you a little bit more about that next week. But Fish Hawk Live is hitting the road at the end of July. So for Captain Phil Retherford, I'm Chris Larson. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. We really appreciate you coming on, and we will talk to you next week.